Back on the Riley again now. I've been cleaning up the brake drums that I got with the parts, the pile of parts I managed to find. The car originally did come with 4 drums, but one of them is slightly mismatched. So you can see the bolt holes there are smaller than the ones I actually need. And I have already mostly cleaned up 2 of them. I had the third one there, I just haven't got round to wire brushing that yet. But I've been cleaning those up as well as the new ones. And one of the things I wanted to do was check that they haven't been skimmed. So with the Riley 9 brakes, because of the way the brake shoes work, where one end of the brake shoes are actually fixed, there's a pivot point that you can't change, you can't move it. So if you skim the drums, the brake shoes have to move out a lot further and you lose some of the braking efficiency. So really you want a set of unskimmed drums because there's no way to compensate for that. So I know the nominal diameter of them is 13 inches. So I've made up this rod to be exactly 13 inches long. The ends are curved, so it fits in the curve of the brake drum. This is actually just a piece of scrap aluminium from a TV antenna, old TV antenna. And if I check these drums, these incidentally have been soaking in the evaporust to try and get the surface rust off them. And the first one came out reasonably well. The second one, it hasn't really worked that well on it, and the third one's just not doing anything. So I'm pretty sure that evaporust is now completely saturated. It's gone completely black. So I'll need to either get some more, or I'll probably just wire brush these because you can easily do that. But measuring the original ones with my gauge, I think my gauge is just fractionally over the 13 inches because it doesn't quite fit in. You can feel it's just about to go, but I've measured all 3 of these and it shows me that none of those have been skimmed. But looking at the new ones that came with the parts I got, you can see quite clearly actually this one has been machined. So if you put the gauge in here, it's a bit tricky to find the midpoint, but hopefully you can clearly see there's a gap there. And if I wanted to know exactly how much this has been skimmed, I would use feeler gauges to measure the gap, and then I know how much bigger it is than the 13 inches. But luckily there's just that one that's been skimmed. So that gives me 6 brake drums from which to choose a good set of 4 for the car. So that'll be one of the jobs for the weekend. And I'm still waiting for the dies so I can finish the front rear suspension mounting points, but it also occurred to me that before I can mount those, I need to know exactly where the rear axle is going to fall. So I might as well start cleaning that up. I need to at least put in the spare block with the gearbox bolted to it so the gearbox is sitting in the right place, so I can bolt the shortened torque tube up to it, and that'll give me the exact midpoint of the rear axle over the chassis rails, and then I can figure out exactly where the front pin needs to go so that the shackles are parallel effectively. So I want the axle in the midpoint of the 2 mounting pins, so that when the axle moves up and down, the motion on the shackles will be similar. It's not going to be exactly the same, because if you think of it, the torque tube is pivoted at that point, so this is actually going up and down in an arc. So the 2 shackles are never going to move totally in sync, if that makes sense. But the amount of movement is quite small, so where I get it on here, it isn't that critical, but I want to get it reasonably accurate. So there is actually nothing stopping me from assembling the rear axle now. It just needs wire brushing. I've got a differential and all the differential parts. I have all the bearings, so I might as well start building that. This is my beefed up Austin 7 seat base. You can see it's much thicker steel, so a lot more solid. And I bolted that back into the car and sat in the car to test the seat, and there was a bit of a ping noise and the front of the seat lifted up. And it's, if we get rid of this, so that's the base. But if you look at the seat, what's happened is one of the runners is broken, and it looks like the metal is just cracked all the way along the edge. You can see that would be quite a stress point because it is folded over to make the actual runner parts of the seat, so it slides on these. You can see those are sort of folded over and the two match. So it's just cracked all the way along that fold. So that's a bit annoying. This piece is just kind of riveted into place, and I do have another seat. So I think what I'll do is have a look at the second seat and see if it's in any better condition and doesn't look too fatigued, and I guess drill out these rivets and swap it over. But actually it may all be riveted, it may not just be that piece. I can see what look like spot welds here. So I'm not sure if maybe I should just build some sort of new seat base and just weld it to it and just have adjustable holes for where the actual seat bolts in. Yeah, I'm not sure the best way to fix this now. The thing that worries me is if I just switch this over to the second one, that could be the seats from the same car, obviously, so that could just be equally as metal fatigued and similar on the other side. So, you know, I don't want these just breaking again. So that's something to ponder, which is a bit annoying because I was hoping the Austin was pretty much finished and ready to go. I'm still waiting to hear about the paperwork for it before I can get it VIN'd. So I've got a little bit of time to play with this until that comes up. It's pretty early in the morning still, so everything's covered in dew and it's quite chilly. I've started cleaning up the rear axle parts and the brake drums. So in this drum I have a phosphoric acid solution, and I've got parts soaking in that at the moment. I completely used up all the evaporust. It didn't take too long, but I did buy a 5-litre container of the acid. I'm not sure exactly what sort of ratio I use it to, but it's really watered down, but it's still effective. So if I can do this without dropping my phone in it. So that's one of the brake drums that's been soaking in it, and you can see it takes the rust off. There's still some rust on the outside, but I'll wire brush that. Because it's so diluted, it is going to take a few days. This is one of the brake cross shafts. You can see the rust does start coming off it. So I'll leave that soaking a few more days. The rear axle casing I'm going to have to do in 2 halves, obviously, because it's too long to fit in there. But you can see just overnight, you can see the sort of the difference. So I'll leave that there. I put some plastic over it overnight just to stop the condensation getting on it. So that'll need a couple more days. I think I'll stop this and take my gloves off and then continue. So this is what I'm using to clean everything, just Turgofos. Doesn't actually say what the concentration is, but like I say, I dilute it down a lot. So I think that big tub probably had about that much in the bottom, and then filled the rest up with water. This stuff's good. They use it for, I think it's for cleaning milk equipment, like milking equipment, milk tankers, and all that sort of stuff. I use the same sort of stuff to clean and sterilize the bottles I use for making ginger beer. So as long as it's really dilute and you wash it all off carefully at the end, it works really well. So this is another tub of it with, I think there's a couple more brake drums in there and the brake back plates. But I have now painted the sort of lozenge shaped plates that go on the end of the rear axle, and I've also painted up the torque tube. That's this here. I just wired the end on for now because this is all captive on the tube, of course, because there's a ball end. I haven't painted the ball. That'll all get covered in grease anyway. I have had a little bit of a reaction where it's bubbled up a bit, but it's not too bad. So that's the torque tube, and I also did a light coat on the clutch and flywheel parts, just to stop them rusting basically. So the paint I'm using is that engine enamel, which works really well, and you can spray it just straight on the bare steel. So I'll leave all of those soaking today. I might take them out of the acid and give them a bit of a scrub. I find that helps, just to break off any loose rust. And then they'll probably need a few more days in there. And I'll have to get more paint and paint those up. The Austin seat I really need to fix. And I think what I'm going to do, you can see I've marked it. These lines are where the bolt holes are. So this one is pretty easy, it's just a strip. So I think what I'm going to do is weld a 5mm strip of steel across here with the appropriate holes drilled in it to be able to position the seat. This one's a bit trickier because the holes aren't in alignment, and the reason for that is because the chassis rails on the Austin 7, of course, are at an angle, so I couldn't get the holes in line. But I think what I'll do for that is I'll reuse some of the steel I've got here and make a wider plate that will go welding across here. That'll give me a good strong weld to the seat base, and I can also then make the appropriate holes. I just want to have 4 inches maybe of travel, 4-6 inches, just so you can adjust the seat if you really need to. I mean, realistically, the car's going to be fitted to me. I can't imagine anyone else ever driving it. So I'll set it up how I want it, but it's good to have that adjustment in there just in case you need it. So I've finished welding up the new base for the seat. Most of it's made from 5mm strap, and there's just a piece of 3mm strap across the middle just to give me more points of attachment to the actual seat base. But it's a little bit of a funny shape because of where the holes need to be. But you can see I've got it positioned so it's right in the middle of the travel for me. There's about 3 inches of adjustment on it, which should be enough. And when it's actually bolted down, the seat is far more secure, feels a lot better. And I've also welded up under the bottom there, so this is actually now touching the floor. The way the straps work is they're actually up off the floor, but there are spaces that go underneath the bolt holes to hold it. And I think that should all be strong enough. The only thing that really worried me is where the seat actually attaches to the frame, but there's 6 attachment points plus the rear. I suppose I could put some under the front, but I don't think it's really needed there. The hardest part was just making sure the holes all lined up with the existing holes in the floor. So it took a little bit of measuring and then drilling the holes, then tacking things in place just to make sure they were going to be okay. But now that that works, I'm going to hang it up and paint it all black, and it'll be ready to bolt in the car in a couple of days, hopefully. So the seat's painted, and inside that's going to take a few days to dry. The only other small job I did today was I've removed the valve gear, the valves and the springs from the head I'm no longer going to use, and I have the other head is soaking in a bit more of my phosphoric acid solution just to give it a final clean. I'm going to take that out of there tomorrow and start grinding the valves in. Once they're all ground in, I'll measure the combustion chamber volumes and I will paint it, and hopefully that's the head done. I still need to sort through my rocker gear. This box is quite good. We got this from the warehouse on the weekend, but it's got 8 compartments, so it's really good for a 4-cylinder engine to keep all the different bits and pieces with their respective cylinders. It seems like we've had a pile of compost delivered. I did say to her, well, that's not enough to build a decent banking, but apparently that's not what it's for.